Anyone that has been terminated at the FBI has been done so.
No, the question
they failed to meet the muster and their constitutional obligation.
I will work on the audio-visual capabilities.
I'm going to borrow your terminology and call bullshit on your entire career in Congress.
I'm reclaiming my time,
It has been a disgrace to the American people. You can reclaim your time all you want.
Mr. Chairman, you're going to allow a witness to speak this way? Mr. Chairman, would you give
recuse yourself, Director?
The gentleman has.
It comes without any warning. Eric Swalwell leans into his microphone and the energy in the hearing room shifts. Not dramatically, not with shouting or theatrical gestures. Just a subtle shift in atmospheric pressure. The kind you feel before a storm breaks. Kash Patel has been sitting at the witness table for over an hour, answering questions about budget allocations and operational priorities. The usual congressional theater, a comfort zone for someone who has navigated these waters before. Calm, prepared, occasionally combative in the Washington style that plays well on cable news. But then Swalwell asks a question that cuts through all of it. Have you reviewed all of the Epstein files? 4 seconds of silence. Personally, no. The admission lands quietly. No gasps from the gallery. No sudden movement. But everyone in that room understands what just changed. The FBI director has admitted he hasn't personally reviewed one of the most politically explosive case files in modern American history. The Epstein files. Say those 2 words in Washington and watch how quickly conversations shift. Flight logs and private islands. Billionaires and politicians. Allegations spanning decades and implicating some of the most powerful people in the world. A case that ended with a death in a Manhattan jail cell and left more questions than answers. And the man running the FBI hasn't read all of it. Swalwell doesn't attack, he just repeats what he just heard. You haven't reviewed all of it. Patel pivots immediately, a practiced move, the kind senior officials perfect through years of hostile questioning. He talks about ensuring the safest country in modern history, about resources devoted to protecting children, about human trafficking operations dismantled under his watch, about the FBI's mission being far broader than any single investigation. It's a strategic reframing. The implication is clear. I run the FBI, I don't read every page of every file. And in any other context, that might be reasonable. Directors don't personally review every document. They manage systems. They set priorities. They delegate authority. But this isn't any file. Swalwell knows it. Patel knows it. Everyone watching knows it. You don't know how many times Donald Trump's name appears in the files. There it is. The name that makes everything sharper, more dangerous, more personal. The room tenses. Patel characterizes the framing as misleading. He says they've released everything credible and legally permissible. He says irresponsibly releasing information would only fuel misinformation and conspiracy theories. He talks about the importance of maintaining the integrity of investigations. All of that might be true, but none of it answers the question. How many times does Trump's name appear? Swalwell presses. Could it be hundreds? At least 500? No, Patel responds. So not hundreds. But he still doesn't give a number. Don't you think this should be your business? Patel doesn't accept the premise. My business is ensuring the security of this country. He pushes back harder now, pivoting to California's sanctuary city policies, border security failures, Democrats' record on crime. It's a counterattack. If you're losing ground in the current field, change the battlefield. But Swalwell keeps returning to the same territory. The files, the names, the simple question of what Patel knows and who he's told. Then comes the moment that will define the entire exchange. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? The question hangs in the air. This isn't about public disclosure anymore. This is about internal government communication. About what information flows up the chain of command. About who knows what. Patel says he has never discussed the files with the president. Swalwell clarifies. He's not asking about the president. He's asking about the Attorney General. The Attorney General has had numerous conversations with you about the review of these files. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name appears in the Epstein files? Yes or no? The room goes completely still. Yes or no? No. A single word. Definitive. Direct. Swalwell repeats the question, narrowing the language, eliminating escape routes. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? No. The committee chairman intervenes. The question has been asked and answered. But that doesn't diminish what just happened. The record now contains something simple but explosive. The FBI director hasn't reviewed all of the Epstein files. He doesn't know, or won't say, how many times the former president's name appears in those files. And he didn't inform the Attorney General that the name appears there. Let that sink in for a moment. One of the most sensitive investigations in FBI history. A case touching some of the most powerful people in the world. And the director didn't think it was relevant to tell his boss that a former president's name appears in the files. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what the Epstein files represent. This isn't just another white-collar crime investigation. This is the documentation of what prosecutors have called an extensive sex trafficking operation that operated with apparent impunity for decades. When federal agents raided Epstein's Manhattan mansion in 2019, they found volumes of evidence. Photographs, videos, flight logs from his private jet, phone records, financial documents, calendars showing meetings with some of the most influential people in business, science, politics, and entertainment. The investigation didn't end with Epstein's death. If anything, it expanded. Federal prosecutors continued building cases against his associates. Civil lawsuits multiplied. More victims came forward. More documents emerged. And throughout all of it, names. Powerful names. Famous names. Names that could end careers and destroy reputations. One of those names, apparently, is Donald Trump. This isn't surprising to anyone who's followed this story. Trump and Epstein moved in the same social circles for years. There are photos of them together at parties in the 1990s. Trump called Epstein a terrific guy in a 2002 New York Magazine article, noting that he likes beautiful women on the younger side. But there's a difference between public associations and what might be documented in FBI files. Between social photographs and investigation records. Between casual acquaintance and something that merits inclusion in a federal sex trafficking case file. The question isn't whether Trump knew Epstein. We know he did. The question is what the FBI files say about the nature and extent of that relationship. What meetings are documented? What communications were captured? What witnesses have said? And the man responsible for running the FBI, Kash Patel, says he doesn't know the details and didn't think it was important enough to tell the Attorney General. Patel's defenders will argue this is entirely appropriate. The FBI investigates thousands of cases. The director can't personally review every file. There are protocols for what gets elevated to whom. Names appearing in investigation files doesn't mean anything nefarious. Context matters. All reasonable points. But they don't address the fundamental issue. This isn't a random investigation. This is arguably the most politically sensitive case file the FBI holds. A case that's been the subject of countless FOIA requests, congressional inquiries, and public speculation for years. A case where transparency and accountability have been demanded for years. And when the director is asked directly whether he informed his superior that a former president's name appears in these files, the answer is no. This creates a gap, a distance between what appears important and what's treated as important. Between what the public might reasonably expect senior law enforcement officials to know and what they apparently choose to know. Swalwell calls it an oversight failure. Patel characterizes the obsession as distasteful and politically motivated. Both positions reflect genuine perspectives on how the FBI should operate. But this exchange reveals something deeper than partisan disagreement. It exposes the fundamental tension between institutional process and public accountability. Between bureaucratic norms and extraordinary circumstances. Should the director personally know every detail of every sensitive file? Practically speaking, probably not. The FBI handles too much for that to be realistic. Should the director know the broad outlines of the most explosive investigation in recent history? Most people would say yes. Should the director inform the Attorney General when a former president's name appears in a sex trafficking investigation? That seems like information that should flow upward. But it didn't, or at least, that's what Patel says. This raises uncomfortable questions. Was it an oversight, a deliberate choice, a reflection of how routine name appearances have become, or evidence of something more concerning? The hearing doesn't answer these questions. Hearings rarely do. They create records. They establish positions. They force sworn statements that can be referenced later. What Swalwell accomplished in those few minutes wasn't catching Patel in a lie or exposing a smoking gun. It was something simpler and potentially more powerful, getting specific admissions on the record. The director hasn't reviewed all the Epstein files. The director doesn't know how many times Trump's name appears. The director didn't tell the Attorney General that Trump's name appears in the files. These aren't allegations, not speculation, they're admitted facts, stated under oath by the FBI Director himself. And those facts create their own narrative. For critics, this is evidence of deliberate avoidance. The kind of selective ignorance that provides plausible deniability. How can you be accused of hiding information if you never looked? For supporters, this is evidence of professionalism. The director shouldn't be reading files looking for politically useful information. He should be running the bureau based on established processes and protocols. Both interpretations are internally consistent. Both reflect genuine concerns about how law enforcement should operate. And both will be argued in news cycles, social media threads, and partisan op-eds in the coming weeks. But the exchange itself is already complete. The questions were asked. The answers were given. The gaps between them are now part of the permanent record. Patel tried to shift the conversation several times during those minutes. He talked about border security, about crime statistics, about the broader mission of protecting Americans. He characterized the focus on name counts as a distraction from real work. Swalwell rejected the pivots. He kept returning to the same simple questions. Did you read the files? Do you know the count? Did you tell your boss? It was a masterclass in congressional interrogation. No theatrics. No speeches disguised as questions. Just persistent, focused inquiry that demanded clear answers. The answers themselves aren't dramatic. No confession. No revelation of wrongdoing. Just acknowledgement of what wasn't done, what isn't known, what wasn't communicated. Sometimes that's more powerful than smoking guns. Because it's harder to defend. Patel can't claim he was misquoted or his words taken out of context. He can't argue the evidence is fabricated or the witnesses are lying. He can only stand behind his answers and hope they'll be interpreted charitably. When the exchange ends, the room doesn't explode. No dramatic exit or heated confrontation. The hearing just moves on to the next member, the next round of questions, the next political performance. But what happened in those minutes doesn't disappear. It becomes a clip played on news channels, a quote examined in opinion pieces, a moment referenced in future hearings and investigations. It becomes part of the story we tell about the Epstein case, about the Trump administration, about FBI independence and accountability. And it becomes a reminder of something fundamental about power and transparency in America. Sometimes the most revealing moments aren't when people say too much, but when they admit what they haven't looked at, what they don't know, what they haven't said. Because those admissions raise a harder question to answer than any allegation. Why? Why wouldn't the FBI director personally review the most sensitive investigation under his watch? Why wouldn't he know basic details about what's in those files? Why wouldn't he inform the Attorney General when a former president's name appears in a sex trafficking investigation? Maybe there are good answers to these questions. Answers about scale and process and appropriate delegation. Answers about maintaining investigation integrity and avoiding political interference. Or maybe there aren't. Maybe the answers are uncomfortable. Maybe they reveal choices made to avoid exactly the kind of scrutiny Swalwell just provided. The hearing doesn't resolve this. It can't. All it can do is create the record and let history judge. But in that moment, in that room, with those questions hanging in the air, one thing was clear. The silence around what Patel doesn't know and hasn't said speaks louder than any answer. The FBI director sits at the witness table, calm and professional, defending his decisions and his institution. Arguing that his job is about security and safety, not about reading every page of every file. And he's right. That is his job. But knowing what matters is also his job. Understanding what's important. Ensuring that information critical to public trust and institutional integrity doesn't get lost in bureaucratic process. And when asked directly whether a former president's name appearing in the Epstein files qualifies as that kind of critical information, his answer, if not in words then in action, was no. That answer will follow him. It will follow this hearing. It will follow the questions about what the FBI knows, who knows it, and why Americans weren't told. The gavel eventually falls. The hearing is adjourned. Patel exits through the same door he entered, surrounded by aides and lawyers. But the questions remain. They live in the official transcript. They live in the video record that will be archived and referenced for years. They live in the gap between what we expect our law enforcement leaders to know and what they admit they've chosen not to know. And they live in the three simple words Eric Swalwell extracted and Kash Patel confirmed, personally, no. I don't know, no. Three admissions that tell their own story. Not of crimes committed or laws violated, but of choices made about what to look at, what to know, what to report. In the careful, controlled world of congressional testimony, these admissions are as close to revelation as you're likely to get. And sometimes, that has to be enough.